And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Dan Harary, Hollywood publicist, author, and longtime UFO researcher. He has been a member of the Southern California chapter of MUFON, and he conceived the LA-based Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Dan, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks very much, man. It's nice to finally meet you. You and I have been emailing for quite a while, so it's great to put the face. And I still think you look like 20-year-old Steve Perry. You remind me of Steve Perry.
Well, I wish I could sing like him.
I know, man. What a voice that guy had, right?
Yeah, he was or is amazing.
Amazing.
Dan, it's my understanding that you've had 3 UFO sightings. So can we start with your experiences first?
Sure. Actually, I need to update my bio or my resume, Jeff, because I had my fourth sighting on June 2nd this year. So I've had 4. I've actually had 4 sightings. The first sighting really was remarkable because 50 years later, it changed my life. So I guess I'll do that one first. I grew up right near Asbury Park, New Jersey, suburban New Jersey. My dad worked for the U.S. Army as a civilian engineer and a physicist. And there's a lot more to talk about with my dad. My mom was a school teacher. So one day in March, I remember the month and year, March 1970, I was 13 years old. My dad picked me up from school one day, suburban New Jersey. He picked me up in his car from school. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We're driving home on our street. And as we're driving, a huge, enormous UFO, it looked like the letter V like Victor, big silver V UFO is hovering above my father's car, and it's slowly following the car. So I see through the windshield. I said, Dad, there's a UFO. Dad, there's a UFO. Stop the car. Stop the car. Dad, stop the car. He stops the car. We get out. We stand in front of the car. I'm jumping up and down, man. I'm 13. Dad, look, it's Star Trek. It's Star Trek. Dad, isn't this cool? It's great. Look, Dad, look, it's huge, man. This huge thing is hanging above us, right? No smoke, no noise, no propellers, just hovering like a butterfly. This silver, shiny silver V is hovering in the sky, 400 feet above us, maybe, right? And I'm thrilled. I'm jumping. My dad looked at it, Jeff, like it was a head of lettuce at the supermarket. No interest, couldn't care less, literally no reaction. And we'll get to that part more later. He looked at it like, oh, okay. I should. And then he looks at his car, like, yeah, I should get my car washed. He looks at his socks, looks at his watch, bored to tears. I'm jumping up and down. My father was bored to tears, okay? 2 minutes. He looks down at me and he goes, come on. He goes, come on, kid, let's go home. Okay. We get in the car, go home, rotary phone, man, 1970. I go in the kitchen, rotary phone. I call the Asbury Park Press, our hometown newspaper. Hi, I'm Danny. I just saw a UFO with my father. It's a big silver V, a UFO. The lady said, I remember clearly, Sonny, I can't talk to you right now. We're getting hundreds of phone calls about this. I can't talk to you. I got to go. I'm very sorry. Okay. The lady said to me, click. She hung up. I checked the paper, Jeff, every day that week for an article about this sighting. If hundreds of people saw it, right, you'd think there'd be an article, right? Nothing ever ran in the paper. Okay, I forgot about that event for 47 years. I utterly and completely forgot that happened. My father and I never discussed it ever. I never told the rest of my family or my friends. It just it evaporated out of my memory. It just went away. And why? And people ask me, how could you forget? We were mentioning, you and I were talking a little bit earlier. I was a drummer from the age of 10, and I got my drum set at 12. I was in rock bands. I was chasing girls. I was going to rock concerts. I'm not thinking about aliens and UFOs when I'm 13. I'm studying for my bar mitzvah. It's just not going to happen. I'm not going to think about UFOs. Okay? So I forgot for 47 years. Now we come to the amazing part. That's not even the amazing part of the story. 47 years later, my dad passed away, April 2017, in Florida with his second wife. And I'm here in LA. I was very sad. And a couple of days after he passed, I went to Junior's Deli. It's not there anymore, in LA, to get a pastrami sandwich in my father's honor, because we used to go there and eat pastrami sandwiches. So I went to get a sandwich in my father's honor and to be sad and to think about my father. That's why I went to Junior's Deli, April 2017. I ordered my sandwich. The waiter walks away. And now I swear everything I'm about to tell you really happened. I'm sitting there thinking about my dad. A beam of light or energy came from above. It banged into the right side of my head hard, like bang. I thought somebody had knocked their knuckles against my head. Bang. And then through my eyes and my brain, projected in the air in front of me, about 6 to 8 inches, projected in the air, 3D color hologram, home movie, home movie of the UFO sighting from 1970. It played with audio. Okay. I'm sitting there, I'm watching an event from my life from 47 years earlier. And I'm going, Dad, look, I'm jumping up and down. I said, Dad, look, it's a UFO. It's just like, I did remember that. And it's playing. Now, it's not from my eyes or my point of view. I'm in the video. My joke is, it was like God had a cameraman behind my father's car and took the car, me, my dad, and the V all in one frame. You know what I'm saying? The camera was behind us.
Yeah, it's
I'm
amazing.
I'm in the movie. It's not from my memory. It's not a memory. I'm in the movie. So this time I go, Dad, look. And this time my dad looked down at me, winked at me, and then he said, come on, kid, let's go home. Okay, now I did not remember any of this, let alone my father winked at me, right? Now, so I'm 20, 30 seconds max. And then this little movie just vanished. It vanished. And I'm like, okay, that's the most amazing thing ever in the history of my life, right? Then I hear, now this has happened to me many times in my life. It's always in my right ear. I hear a little voice, and the voice said, get a pen, get a pen, get a pen. You need a pen, get a pen. I asked the waiter for a pen, put it in my right hand. On the table in front of me is a paper placemat. My hand did automatic writing. My hand wrote, write a book about benevolent aliens. Then my hand wrote, lead character's father knew about UFOs. Then my hand wrote capital A, capital T, capital C, and then my hand stopped moving. I'm looking at this paper, Jeff. I'm like, what the hell is happening here? What is going on, man? I'm looking, and after a few minutes, I came up with a title for a book after they came, ATC. That book, my book, was given to me. It was given to me. I think it was from my father from heaven. He had died 3 days earlier. Now, there are people who think it was an ET download. Steve Bassett, one of my best friends, he said it was an ET download. I said, maybe, but I'd like to think it was my father from heaven. So I got a book. I got a book out of that. I ate my pastrami sandwich. I went home. The next 8 months, every day and night for 8 months, I wrote my book after they came.
Did you also write the book through automatic writing?
No, great question. You're the only person that ever thought of that one. No. I looked at that paper on the table, and I'm like, this is like a mandate, Jeff. This is like the universe is saying, Dan, write a book about benevolent aliens. Okay, that's number one. Okay, lead character's father knew about UFOs. Well, I guess that's my father, which means I need to be the lead character. And then after they came, okay, aliens come, they're benevolent. The lead character's father knew about you. I had the outline of a book. It was given to me. I swear to you, it was given to me from above. I didn't go to write a book. I went to get a sandwich. So that's how that book happened. And then here's the bigger picture is the following. I knew my dad worked for the U.S. Army as a civilian engineer and a physicist. He worked there for 45 years, Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, Army base. I knew my dad worked on missile systems and radar systems, and that's all he ever told any of us. My mother, my brothers, me. We never knew what my dad did, really. He never talked about it. It was top secret work. After he died, I called my mother, his first wife. I said, Mom, all the years Dad worked at Fort Monmouth and lived with you, they were together like 28 years. I said, did he ever talk about UFOs? She said in the early, here's a story I never heard before, Jeff, until after my father died. I never heard the story before. She says, in the early 50s, they took your dad deep into the vaults at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey Army base, right? And they showed him something top secret. He came home that night, pale and sweaty and nervous. And my mother said, honey, what's wrong? And my father looked at her and said, I love this story. My father said, I saw something today I could never tell you or anyone about as long as I live. It's top secret. And he never did. He never told my mother or me or his two other sons or anyone ever, right? None of us ever heard the story. Now, are you familiar with the Jackie Gleason, Richard Nixon? You probably know that one.
A little bit.
And when I tell that story, I reference that story. I'll do that very quickly. In 1973, I believe it was, 1973, Richard Nixon was president. He was playing golf with Jackie Gleason in Florida. They were very good friends. They played golf together all day. At the end of the golf tournament, day, Nixon goes, Jackie, you want to see something really cool tonight? Jackie goes, sure. He goes, I'll pick you up at your house. I'm going to show you something that's going to blow your mind. Richard Nixon, the man, now he's the president of the United States. He's a man alone in his car, goes to Jackie Gleason. Says, Jackie, come on. Two guys are in a car. There's no military. There's no police. There's no motorcycle. It's just two men driving a car. He's the president. They go to Homestead Air Force Base in Florida. Nixon pulls up at the gate. The guy looks at him and goes, can I help you? And goes, yeah, open the gate. He goes, Mr. President? Yeah, open the gate. Okay. It's the president of the United States, right? No one's expecting him to just drive. And I've heard this story many different times from many different places. I'm pretty sure this really did happen. They go through the gate. They go into one of the hangars. Richard Nixon shows Jackie Gleason 4 or 5 dead alien bodies in large, like, test tubes of formaldehyde. And Jackie Gleason comes home that night, and his wife, Marilyn, said he was never the same. He couldn't eat for 2 weeks. He didn't leave the house. He was so upset and disturbed that aliens really existed. He was very, very upset. Okay, so that's a parallel. My dad tells my mom, I saw something today I could never tell you about as long as I live. And my father never did. And my mother said he was never the same after that day. So to me, those are comparable stories, I think.
Do you think that ship was something that had crashed here and we somehow got it working again or reverse engineered it?
You mean from my father? My father's?
The one you
or
saw
Jackie Gleason?
The one you saw as a child.
Oh, the one I saw. Okay, that's a great question. All right, let me tell you a little bit more about my dad, and then I'll come back, and then I'll answer your question. Okay, so he saw something top secret. That's that part. We knew he worked on radar and missiles. That we knew. After he died, I went through my dad's papers, and I found a profile of my father from his workplace from 1985. I did not know I had this in my possession. I still have it. And it proves that my father helped invent military drones for the Army. Drones. Okay, it proves it. I have it in writing. I'm like, my father invented military drones for the Army? Well, that's pretty amazing, given that so many drones are so popular now, right? My father helped invent drones. I have that in writing. Okay, no one knew that, all right? So that's part of the puzzle. Richard Dolan has a book called UFOs in the National Security State. In the back, there's a glossary of major UFO sightings above U.S. military bases going back to the 40s. I looked in that glossary, Jeff, and in 1951 and in 1952, there were UFOs on radar above Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. My dad started working there in 1951. My dad worked in the radar branch. He had to have either seen them or heard about them, or he had to have known that those events, happened, at the least. He had to have been told. He was in the radar branch, and they were seen on radar, so that's that. I remember as a kid, my dad went to the Pentagon all the time. I remember once as a kid, my dad said, I wrote a paper that JFK read. Really, Dad? You wrote a paper that JFK read? He goes, yeah, I think Lyndon Johnson too. Really? Okay, that's pretty major. My mother said my father used to go to the White Sands missile testing range all the time. I never knew that. He went there all the time. Now the story really gets good. Last year, Stephen Greer did a 3-hour press conference in Washington, Stephen Greer. And he, to announce that he has like 150 whistleblowers lined up, ready to go to testify before Congress, if and when the Schumer Rounds bill ever gets passed through Congress. In his lecture, Jeff, this is on TV, I have it, I freeze framed it. He shows a slide of 145 US military bases that he has proof of through his whistleblower network that worked on reverse engineering of ET technology. 145. I stopped, freeze framed my big TV, and went with my finger, number 51, Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. Okay, so now we summarize everything. The UFO I saw with my dad in 1970. He was bored to tears, knew what it was, and he'd seen it a million times. I believe it was a military UFO drone based on ET technology. I believe in my heart my father was involved in reverse engineering of ET technology. I've told the story all over the world to hundreds of people, and they all say, Dan, of course your father knew. Of course he did. It's the only logical explanation for all of these clues about my father. And then so he dies, I go to get a sandwich, and he sends me this video. And to me, it's, Danny, remember the UFO that we saw 47 years ago? That was me. I couldn't tell you then, but I'm dead now. And I'm going to tell you a clue. And here you go. Because remember when I winked at you? I knew what that was, Danny. And my father told me after he passed. So that's my first sighting, which changed my life because I wrote the book and then I met everyone and I launched the HDA, and it changed my life in every possible way because I went to get a pastrami sandwich.
Well, I think you had a sighting recently, right? Your most recent one. What's that one?
The first one was with my dad. I told you. You want me to do the other? There's
Sure.
3 other ones.
Well, you can go in whatever order you like.
Okay. To me, they're chronological. Number 2 was 1996. My son was 8. He was living in Lancaster. We talked about that earlier, near Edwards, with my ex-wife and my daughter, who was 6 at the time. My son's 8th birthday, May 96. He wanted a telescope for his birthday. So I used to drive out on weekends after I got divorced to be with my kids. So I got him a telescope. It's literally his birthday, May 8th, 1996. We're looking at the sky in Lancaster, which is the high desert. There's no city lights. There's no smog, crystal clear. And you see Saturn and Mars and the moon and everything really cool you see with a telescope, of course. And then we see a bright yellow, white, egg-shaped light come on in the right side of the sky. It just sort of appeared, and it traveled across the entirety of the sky very quickly in a straight line. And I said to my son, I said, Jordan, look, there's a satellite. Isn't that cool? It goes all the way across the sky, Jeff. Then it stops in place for like 30 seconds. Stops in place. And I thought to myself, that satellite's going to fall to Earth. Something went very wrong with that satellite. It's going to plummet. And if it had, I was going to go and phone the military. I was going to say, hey, I just saw a satellite fall out of the sky. Then so it stopped. Then it reversed course and it went all the way back the same way it came from, in the same line. And then it disappeared. I'm like, well, that's not a satellite. I don't think satellites can stop and reverse course, right? It's not a missile. It's not a helicopter, comet, asteroid, plane. It's not. It could only be a drone or an extraterrestrial craft. Those are the only 2 possible explanations for that one. Jimmy Church, who's a friend of mine, said, Dan, you were near Edwards at the time. That was a military UFO that they were testing. I agree. I absolutely agree. I think that because it was right over Edwards, it had to be. My 3rd sighting is really quite remarkable, maybe even more than the one with my dad. 2008. Are you familiar with the Eetti Ranch? Have you heard of the Eetti Ranch?
I have, yes.
Okay. James Gilliland is the owner. Guy long, he looks like a hippie man from like 1967, like love and peace with love beads and stuff. He owns the Eetti Ranch, Washington State, at the base of Mount Adams. Now, Mount Adams is one mountain down from Mount Rainier. And Mount Rainier is where Kenneth Arnold saw his 9 UFOs in June 47. So in 2008, I went to a MUFON LA meeting, and James Gilliland was the guest speaker. And he shows crystal clear movies, Jeff, of UFOs over his property. Eetti Ranch is a world famous UFO hotspot for hundreds of years. The Native Americans used to call Mount Adams the mountain of shining light. Okay, so I had a girlfriend named Barbara. She was a TV writer. We went to this meeting, and he goes, I am having an open house, 4th of July weekend at my property, 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Come and hang out, and you'll see UFOs. That's what he said. So I go to my girlfriend. I go, Barbara, please can we go? Please, can we go? I want to see UFOs. I want to see. Please, can we go? Okay. So she came with me. We spent 3 days and nights at James Gilliland's ranch. During the afternoon, I'm going to say about 150 acres of nothing, of absolute nothing, weeds, surrounded by trees. He has this little house where he lives, and then there's Mount Adams in the distance. That's the whole place. It's nothing. During the afternoons, he had a white tent on the property, and he had people like Nick Pope and William Henry and David Childress, guest speakers, under the white tent, talking about UFOs and Nazca and pyramids and crop circles and all the great orbs, all those cool things. And then at night, they built I'm going to say about 200 people were there that weekend. At night, they built a bonfire, and people were singing and playing guitars and dancing around the fire at night. So the first day, lectures and films and seminars. That night, bonfire, we're looking up at the sky for hours and hours. Nothing happened. Next day, same, lectures, films, seminars, fire, look up in the sky, hours, absolutely nothing. I'm thinking, you can't just desire a UFO to show up, right? Third and final day was this Sunday, lectures in the afternoon, the bonfire, you're looking up, hour, 2 hours, your neck really hurts after a while. After 2 hours on the last day, Jeff, and this is all true, man, I go to my girlfriend, Barbara. I pull out my car keys. I go, Barbara, if we leave right now, we can beat all these other cars because there's going to be a traffic jam, right? As soon as I had my keys in my hand, a black UFO craft just came out of nowhere from behind us. And it just came over us, 200 people, and just stopped. This large black, I don't know the shape. It was so big, I couldn't tell you the shape. But it just stopped above us, blocked out the sky. And I'm looking up. I said to Barbara, I said, what the hell is that thing? And stopped. I'm 400 feet above us, 500 feet, no more. Stopped. We're all looking up. Now, underneath this thing, there's a crystal glass bulb, I'll call it. A large crystal glass bulb that illuminated a brilliant dark emerald green color light inside the bulb. I'm like, okay. And then the light from the bulb beamed down over us, 200 people. And it bathed, I'm telling you all, we were all bathed in this beautiful emerald green light. And it was like this, light, 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 light. And like from the X-Files when they're all looking up and they're in white. Well, I'm in emerald green, so it's pretty cool. We're all emerald green. And it was like Morse code. It was like Morse code in light. I wasn't afraid. I got the following message, not in my head. I got it in my heart, and I still can feel it to this day. Hello, we're here. We're sorry we're late. We know you've been waiting for us. We got caught up. We're in the neighborhood. We wanted to say hello. We love you. Don't be afraid. Everything's cool. Love one another. Be kind to planet Earth. We got to go. We'll see you another time. We love you. So long. We got to go now. Okay, right? Then the light stopped, went back into that little bulb. Then the light went off inside the bulb. And then the craft slowly just moved away, slowly, slowly. And then bang, zoom, flew over Mount Adams and it disappeared. And this is a true story. So I'm crying. I was crying. And people are crying. And I'm like, did that really just happen? Did that really? Oh, my God. Now, I can still feel that. That was in '08. I feel it right now to this day. I became a nicer person, truly. After that event, I became a much nicer person. That's my third one. My fourth one and last final just happened. I'm the publicist for Contact in the Desert, the world's largest UFO convention. We just had our convention the first week of June in Palm Springs. It's an annual event. The last night at Contact this year, it was June 2nd was the last night before the last day. They had a CE5 event. Do you know what a CE5 event is?
Yes.
So I'd never been, I knew what it was. I'd never been to one. They invited me to go. So I went to a CE5 event the night of June 2nd, Palm Springs, on the Great Lawn at this hotel resort in Palm Springs. Beautiful, crystal clear night. So about 200 people are holding hands in an oval circle, holding hands. And there's a leader in the middle of the circle. And he's the leader of the CE5. And he's like looking up at the sky. And he's like, Space Brothers, we want to meet you. We love you. Please come down. Please show yourselves. We have open hearts and open minds. If you'd like to land, please land. We want to meet you. We love you. We know you're there. Please show yourselves. And so we're holding hands for like an hour and a half, from 9 to 10:30. We're holding hands in a circle, looking up. Again, my neck is killing me, right? And I'm thinking, this is very lovely and very sweet. And I'm thinking, there's no way you can summon a UFO. I'm like, you can't summon a UFO. It can't be done. So after 90 minutes, 9 to 10:30, the leader says, if you're tired of standing, lay on the grass and look up. Okay. I lay on the grass looking up. Nothing's happening. I look at my watch. I'm thinking, I got to go to bed, man. I have to wake up at like 5 a.m. the next morning. I had a million things to do the next day. I literally, and this is very similar to the keys in my hand story, because I was about to leave the other place. I looked at my watch. I said, I'm going to wait 5 more minutes. Nothing happens. I got to go to bed. As soon as I thought that, and again, this is true, what I'm about to tell you is true, and I can't explain it. There was a boom in the sky right above us, 200 people, clear sky, boom, right above us. We look up, a large, dark, gray puff of smoke just appears. And from it, a V-shaped, white V, like Victor, shaped craft shot out of this smoke. It just shot out of the smoke out of nowhere. It was bright white, like vanilla ice cream white. Rounded tips, not like the sharp tipped one I saw in 1970. This had rounded tips, V. It had a beautiful gold ribbon of color through the vanilla. It looked like vanilla ice cream with caramel. So it's this white, beautiful, shiny, bright white V with gold ribbon through the V. And then underneath the V, here's the best part of the story, man. Under each of the wings were three, there's 3 and 3, octopus suction pods. They looked like large octopus suction, and they were pulsing. They were pulsing like they had heartbeats. They were translucent, light brown, translucent. They were lit up. There was 3 and 3, and they were like boom, 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 like they had heartbeats. I saw this as clear as I'm looking at you right now, 300 feet in the sky at the most. And I said to myself, that thing's alive. Whatever that is, that's alive. It was either a craft that had a creature underneath it, or the creature and the craft were one. I'm telling you, man, because you could tell. It looked like heartbeats, the way it was pulsing. We all saw it. Everyone cheered and clapped. We were hugging and stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. I guess you can summon a UFO if you do it in the right way. So I've seen 4 now in my life.
I think your first book after they came is based on benevolent aliens. And do you feel that they are all benevolent?
No, actually, I know for a fact. So in my book, I wanted to do benevolent aliens. Why? In the 80-year whatever history of, books, movies, TV shows about aliens, 99% of all of those, they're evil, right? Evil and violent. War of the Worlds, Independence Day. My joke is they come to kill us and eat us usually. And at the deli, the download I got was write a book about benevolent aliens. It was part of my download. So I personally wanted to write about benevolent aliens. When I've gone to UFO conferences and given lectures, people come up to me to buy my book. They go, we're so glad someone finally wrote a book about benevolent aliens. Like, why do they always have to kill us and eat us? So I did that on purpose. Now, I'm friends with Nick Pope. Nick Pope gave a lecture in February in LA, and he said, be careful what you wish for about disclosure. He goes, I know for a fact that many races, I was there, I was in the front row. I saw him say these words. I know for a fact that many races of aliens are demonic and evil. And a lot of people are not going to be happy when they learn that these evil demonic races exist. He goes, I'm just warning you now. Everyone wants disclosure. He goes, be careful what you wish for. And I was like, uh-oh, that's certainly not good. There are, I think, 123 different races of aliens. I forget the number. A friend of mine, Craig Campobasso, he's an HDA member. He has a book about all the alien races, which I've been meaning to buy. He delineates, there are many different races from different, wherever they're from, different points of origin. Just like there are different races of humans, there are different races of extraterrestrials. So according to Nick Pope, many are demonic and evil, okay? Put that on here. Separately, I have a good friend named Mark Glenn Moore. He's a successful businessman. He lives in the Bay Area. Mark is 60 years old. He's been taken by Pleiadians since the age of 5 every few years. He's been taken since the age of 5, been taken up. He's 60 now. And he says they're beautiful and they have the long white hair and they're 7 feet tall, gorgeous with the blue eyes. And he says he's been meeting with them for 55 years. They're teachers. They teach him and others that they take how to be kind to one another, how to be good to planet Earth. And he said they're warm and loving people. 10 years ago, he was on a craft with them. So I guess he was 50 at the time. And they gave him a download for a solar energy panel, a unique solar energy panel. And they said, Mark, your mission on Earth is to bring Native American Indians in the American Southwest solar energy. They don't have power. We want you to do that. So Mark goes, okay, right? So he comes back, he meets with engineers. He has a company called the Solar Utility Network. They build a solar network based on the blueprint that he got from Pleiadians. And I believe Mark. I know Mark very well. I believe him. He developed it. He brought it to Native American Indians. He's brought power to tens of thousands of Native American Indians in the last 10 years. He's a multimillionaire as a result of this. And the natives throw him banquet parties and give him awards and honors. And I said, Mark, that's maybe the most amazing story I've ever heard, because I know it's true, because I know he's not a liar. And so you have Nick Pope, evil, demonic, they're going to eat us. And then you have Mark Glenmore, they're loving, they're kind, they're benevolent, they're Pleiadians. So to answer your question, there's a gamut. There are many different races. I'm hoping the Pleiadians show up first to protect us. And I think they have been protecting us from these other a-hole races for a long time. But again, there are many races. Some are good, some are bad, some are ugly. And we just have to hope for the best when disclosure comes.
In your opinion, when do you think, if ever, we will get full disclosure?
I spent Labor Day Monday all day with Stephen Bassett. Stephen Bassett's one of my best friends. He has been a disclosure advocate in Washington, D.C. since 1996. His best friend is Danny Sheehan, who's a famous civil rights attorney in Washington. Danny has been working with Chuck Schumer for 2 years on the Schumer Rounds bill, which will protect whistleblowers who know about ET craft, ET technology, aliens living, aliens dead. This legislation, Chuck Schumer can easily get it passed in the Senate. The GOP in the House, they will not approve this. It's been declined twice. He wants to protect whistleblowers so they can come forward and say, I worked on a UFO. I'm a scientist. We have one of Area 51, wherever they are, right? Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, wherever they are. They're all over the country. There's many of them. And we know there's bodies. I've dissected them. I've met them. I've worked with aliens. But until that legislation passes, these people can get arrested. They can't divulge state secrets. They'll get arrested. They'll be killed. They'll have their pensions. My dad knew about aliens. I know he did. But my dad was never, ever going to jeopardize his pension. There's zero chance. He couldn't wait for his pension from the age of 40. You remember my dad goes, when I retire, I get my pension. I get my pension. He couldn't wait. These people do not want to go to jail. They don't want to be killed and their children buried somewhere that their bodies will never be found. And they don't want to lose their pensions. So that's that part. Steve Bassett says that he strongly believes the new president, whoever the next president is going to help get the Schumer-Rounds bill passed and will help disclose because the time has come. You know, Lou Elizondo has a best-selling book right now called Imminent. He was a top UAP task force guy. He came out in public, and it's a bestseller this week right now, Imminent. And the other day, Jay Stratton announced that he has a tell-all UFO book coming out next year, and he was another head of the UAP task force. These major, major people, and of course, David Grush testified before Congress last year, major people who know are coming forward, not necessarily through Congress, although Grush did, and he's a hero because that took the biggest balls of anyone. He's such a hero in the disclosure movement. He's like the #1 guy. But now they're writing books. Why? Because these books are going to be bestsellers. They're going to make $1 million, and they're going to get the word out. Now, I've not seen Imminent. I've not held it in my hand, but people tell me there are pages in the book itself that are redacted by the DOD with black magic marker. So Lou would say, here, I want to tell you about this. Here's what the DOD did. And then there's pages of blacked out. Now, as a publicist, I think that's a brilliant marketing move. He actually includes the blacked out. I thought that was genius. So I want to get the book. I haven't seen it yet. But I believe in the next, if you talk to Steve Bassett, it's going to happen December, January, February. I think in the next year, 2 years, I think we're very, very close. We've never been closer because major people are coming forward. The New York Times wrote about the UAP task force. Nobody knew that existed. They just wrote a review of Lou Elizondo's book in the New York Times last week. Disclosure is getting closer every day, every few days. And I just hope myself and my daughter and even my mother, who's 90, we all hope that we live to see disclosure happen while we're still alive, especially my mom.
Well, what inspired you to create the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance? And while you're at it, what is it about?
Okay, that's a great question. So my book, After They Came, I wrote it when did I write it? 2017, 2018. But then it took me 5 years to get a publisher. It literally took me years till I could find a publisher. So I finally got it published. It came out March 1st, 2023. And it's so funny because the next day was Alien Con in Pasadena, and I had a box of my brand new book. It was brand new. And I gave a copy to Giorgio Tsoukalos, who I know, and Paul Hynek, and George Knapp, and Jeremy Corbell, and David Childress, and Nick Pope. And I met Eric Von Daniken. I gave him a copy. He goes, I haven't read this one yet. I go, Eric, it came out yesterday. That's probably why you haven't heard of this one yet. So I was promoting my book. It was so much fun. In late March 2023, I attended UFO Con in San Francisco. I had a booth there to promote my book. And Stephen Bassett gave a lecture at that event called Everything You Want to Know About Disclosure. I went with my brother. My brother lives nearby San Francisco. We went together. And Steve Bassett gave 90 minutes on disclosure. Now, I didn't know that term in regard to the UFO community. I didn't know what the term meant or was. And he explained it. He said, I'm the first lobbyist in the history of Washington to lobby for disclosure. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. Here's where we're at. Here's what we've accomplished. Here's where we're going. At the end of that talk, he went to the restaurant in the hotel. I went with my brother to the restaurant. He's eating with some friends. I went up to him. I said, Stephen, my name is Dan Harary. I loved your lecture. It's great. Here's a copy of my book. I'd like to give this to you as a gift. That's all. I just wanted to give it to him as a gift. He said, Dan, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a Hollywood publicist. Jeff, he shot out of his chair. He goes, you're a Hollywood publicist? He goes, oh my God, I want a Hollywood publicist. He takes out a handful of business cards. I'm going to say 10 cards out of his pocket. He threw them. He only meant to throw one at me. He threw like a dozen of business cards all over the table. He was so excited to meet me. So I gave him my card. I said, "Are you ever in LA?" He said, I live in Washington, D.C., but I come to LA all the time. I said, "Come to LA. We'll have lunch. We'll talk." 2 months later, the tail end of May 2023, Stephen came to LA, called me. We had a 3-hour lunch together in Hollywood. Stephen told me his life story as a disclosure advocate. I told him my life story as a Hollywood publicist. At the end of that lunch, Jeff, he looked at me. He goes, "Dan, what can we do together?" And this is a true story. I get light bulbs every so often. I looked at this guy, light bulb, looked back at Stephen. I said, "We're going to create the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance." It came out of my mouth. He goes, "Oh my God, that's it. Exactly. That's exactly right." He goes, "That's it. Let's do that." We shook hands. 3 days later was Contact in the Desert 2023. He goes, "Dan, you coming to Contact, right?" I go, "No, I don't want to schlep to Palm Springs. It's a pain in my ass." He goes, no, you got to come. You got to come. I'll introduce you to everybody. You got to come. You got to come. I said, "Okay." Stephen put me up that weekend in his room. We were roommates that weekend. He introduced me to Nick Pope and Richard Dolan and Paul Hynek and Whitley Strieber and Travis. Well, I mean, just everybody. George Norrie introduced me to everyone in ufology. And it's so funny, Jeff, because we're telling all these major people, we're going to create the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. George Norrie grabs my shoulder. He goes, "Dan, Danny." He called me Danny. He goes, "I want to be your first member." I go, "George, you are member number one. I promise." Everyone, Dolan, Hope, Hynek, all of them. "Oh yeah, I want to be that. I want to do that. I want to be in that." Everybody said yes. So last summer, Stephen and I had 3 words, Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. We had 3 words, and we had every top UFO person in the world. That's all we had. We had nothing else. I go to my daughter, who's a graphic artist. I go, "I need a logo and a website because I don't know what this is." She created the logo, created a website. Last summer, Stephen and I cranked out our mission statement. We put together all our friends, colleagues, relatives, everyone we could think of. Today, we have about 200 members. It's a year old now. I'm the chairman. Stephen is the executive director. The mission for Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is we are a networking community. Half of our members, Jeff, are UFO ET experiencers, researchers, and disclosure advocates. The other half, this is what makes us unique, are Hollywood writers, producers, directors, and performers. We are melding these 2 universes. I call it chocolate and peanut butter. We're melding these 2 flavors together, and we have a Slack channel for all our members. And we also have live events every so often when I can afford them. But in our Slack channel, they're sharing scripts, books, new films, lectures, new TV shows, casting calls. They're sharing and networking data back and forth, and it's very robust. There's a TV show that I'm involved with that was born through this. We're calling it The Next X-Files. We're pitching it around to Hollywood as we speak right now. I will be one of the producers of the show. So in just a year, it's caught on beautifully. I mean, we have Shirley MacLaine, Thomas Jane, Dee Wallace, Dave Foley, Dania Ramirez. We have a number of famous people: Whitley Strieber, Travis Walton, Richard Dolan, Nick Pope. We have everyone you could think of on the UFO side. Just about everyone. Giorgio doesn't want to do it. He said thanks, but no thanks. So yeah, it's HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. If anyone wants to check it out, HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. There's a join button there. It tells you how to join as a member. We seek donations. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, so we run on donations. But it exceeded our wildest dreams. Stephen and I, we can't believe it caught on so well in such a short time. And I'd say by Christmas, we'll probably have 200 members in there. Many of them are international as well.
This summer, you released 2 new books, which I think I can see behind you, My Paranormal Life and
Right.
5.
That's right.
Can you tell us about those?
It's so funny. I mean, my joke is, Stephen King, I dare you to publish 5 books in 2 years. I've published 5 books in 2 years. I don't think even Stephen King ever pulled that one off. Last year, I wrote My Paranormal Life. Supernatural Stories from a Hollywood Insider. It's my paranormal memoir. It's true stories that I've experienced my entire life from the age of 5 till now. It's my UFO sightings. After my dad passed away, he was a ghost. He visited me in my bedroom as a ghost 3 times. 20 years ago, my dead grandfather was a poltergeist in my apartment. I've heard angelic voices my whole life tell me things to do, always in my right ear. And every time the voice tells me something to do, I do it, and it benefits my life. I once had a chandelier tell me to start my own business, and it changed my life. I became wealthy because of a chandelier. Literally, a voice in a chandelier changed my life. Literally changed my life when I was 40.
What did it tell you?
Had been working for a very, very unpleasant guy for 7 years, Hollywood Publicist. I worked for him for 7 years. I was making him all kinds of money for 7 years, and he never treated me well. So one day we're at a meeting at the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills. We're at a meeting with some new clients, and I had just turned 40 that week. I had just turned 40. I'm sitting there with this guy. I hated this guy, my boss. And he's telling these clients how great he is, what a genius he is, and how successful he is. And I'm sitting there thinking, I have to do something else with my life. My life isn't working out. Literally, the chandelier above me at the Four Seasons Hotel, above to my left in the ceiling, the chandelier goes like this, Dan, and I turn my head, and then the chandelier says, start your own business. I said, excuse me? Start your own business. It was like literally God speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai. I'm telling you that God's honest truth. This is a true story. I'm like, okay. I sit there. My boss is pontificating. I look at him. I go, I have to go. I stood up, Jeff, and I went home. Greatest moment of my professional life. He goes, where are you going? I go, I have to go. I went home. I called all my clients who I was representing my clients through this guy for 7 years. He was getting 90% of my client money, and I was getting 10. I go home, I go, if I get 100%, I'll be a millionaire. Do you understand? I go home from that meeting. I called every one of every client said, Dan, no matter where you go, I'll go. And I'm thinking, I could be a millionaire in my underwear, and I don't have to deal with this asshole anymore. And it's going to change my life. So 3 months later, I launched $1 million business and changed my life in every way. My business is going to be my business is going to be 30 years old in 2026. And to change my life in every possible way. Chandelier. I couldn't tell you who the voice was. I couldn't tell you, but it changed my life in every possible way.
Good for you.
Thank you. So those are the stories in my paranormal life. My grandfather was a poltergeist. He was throwing things, breaking things in my house 20 years ago. We did a Ouija board, my family, we did a Ouija board. And after 2 months of weird things happening, doors slamming, glasses breaking, things flying around, we did a Ouija board, and I said, it's called a planchette. Me, my girlfriend, my son, my daughter, we moved the planchette. And I said, is there a ghost here? Yes. What's your name? Joseph. I go, Joseph, where are you from? It wrote Syria. Syria. I go, are you my grandpa Joe? Yes. My father's father, Joe, was from Syria. I'm like, I'm crying. I'm like, are you Grandpa Joe? Yeah. My Grandpa Joe died in 1967 when I was 11. This is the year 2003. Okay. And then I said, why are you here? And he wrote, Jordan, my son, Jordan. What do you want with Jordan? To teach. My grandfather taught Hebrew. He was an Orthodox Jewish cantor. He'd never met my son. He wants to teach Jordan Hebrew probably. So after a while, I said, Grandpa, I love you. It's nice to talk to you again. You got to go. I said, man, you got to go with respect. You're scaring the S out of my family. I said, literally, I said, you got to go. And it went, yes. And then, Jeff, I lived there another year. Nothing ever happened, ever again. It's my grandfather. I know it was.
Wow.
So I have lots of those. That's my paranormal life. 5, which is my little baby, and I'm getting zero attention for 5, but I'm trying to promote 5. First of all, 5 is my 5th book, but I walk through my neighborhood in Beverly Hills. I walk 5 miles every other day for years. And last fall, I was walking and I just walking my 5 mile and I'm thinking five, just the word five came into my head. And I'm like, five, F-I-V-E. What a great word that is. I don't know why. It's just it's a strong word. And then I'm like, that would be a good name for a character. And then I'm like, well, what would Five's real name be? And then I came up with Fievel. Fievel. Fievel would nickname would be Five. I'm like, okay, I have Fievel. Then I remembered many years ago, this is true, a psychic many years ago told me one of my past lives, I was a star in the Hungarian theater in Europe in the 1870s. Okay, fine. Now, how are you supposed to prove that? You can't. So I'm walking my 5 miles. I've written 4 books at this point. I'm like five. I'm just like five. So Five is the name of a guy named Fievel, and then Fievel is a star in the Hungarian stage in the 1870s. So I have that now, right? I'm like, that's great. But what do I do with that? And then I think, what if I reincarnate that guy? So he's an actor, but he's also a serial killer. I meant I left that part out. He's an actor who's also a serial killer of women. Okay. Then I'm thinking I have that, but that's not a whole book. I'm thinking that's half a book. How can I play with that? And I thought, yeah, it came to me. I go, what if Bruce Springsteen was a serial killer? Like, think about this. The most beloved rock star on the planet Earth. Millions of people cheering, crying, Bruce, right? He plays, and I worked with Bruce when I was 16, and that's another story. So after that, right, he says hello backstage. Then he puts on like a cape, right? And he goes out and he murders women in alleys, right? I'm like, what if the biggest star in the world was a serial killer? I'm like, I got to do something with that. So I reincarnate my character from the 1870s. I reincarnate him 100 years later in the 1970s. I make him a kid named Billy Simon. Billy Simon is like Bruce Springsteen meets James Taylor meets Bob Dylan. He's this like meets Jim Morrison. He's this gifted singer-songwriter, becomes the biggest pop star in the world, but he inherited the soul of the first guy. So after he plays concerts, he kills women after hours. That's Five. People seem to like it. It's a novella. It's a short story. It's a novella. Just came out on my 68th birthday in June. And I'm trying to pitch it as maybe a TV show or a movie. But it just came out, and it's a cute little book, I think.
What about Flirting with Fame?
Flirting with Fame is my first one, my very first book. This came out in 2022. That's the history of my entertainment industry career. I've met many of the biggest stars in the world over the last 40, 50 years. Movie stars, TV stars, rock stars. I've met with, worked with, or just interacted with most of the biggest stars you could name. I have lots of fun photos in there as well. I started in high school. I worked at the Sunshine Inn in Asbury Park when I was 15, 16, 17, and 18 in high school. And I worked with Bruce Springsteen, Kiss, Fleetwood Mac, Humble Pie, Jay Giles, Deep Purple, and all these major rock bands before they were famous, Edgar Winter, before they were famous. So the subtitle says, A Hollywood Publicist Recalls 50 Years of Celebrity Close Encounters. Because from the age of 15 till the age of 65, when I wrote the book, I had 50 years of famous people that I've worked with, met, interacted with. And there's a lot of fun photos, man. I have me and Steven Spielberg, me and Jerry Seinfeld, me and Mel Brooks, Alice Cooper, Hugh Hefner, Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, who had been my childhood hero. He became a friend of mine 20 years later. Drew Carey. There's some Anne Margaret. I mean, there's so many people that I've met and worked with, and Dee Wallace, of course. So that's a fun book. Flirting with Fame is my fun Hollywood stories book. After They Came is my benevolent aliens sci-fi book. My Paranormal Life is my real life memoir of really odd, bizarre events that happened to me in real life. And then Five is my murder, my reincarnated serial killer book. So I think I'm pretty versatile, I guess.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want people to know about?
I am working on the screenplay for After They Came. I'm trying to translate that into a movie screenplay. I have most of it done. I'm trying to pitch that to Hollywood producers as we speak. I don't have any ideas for anything brand new, but I am trying to get After They Came into a movie. That's number one. Number two is I am involved with a new TV show. We're calling it Jason Bourne meets the X-Files. If that happens in Hollywood, I will be a producer of it and a publicist for it, and I have a piece of ownership. So that we're pitching around town. We haven't talked about this yet. I have a podcast called Live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. It's on a little tiny network out of St. Louis called the UnX Network. And they're very nice people. I interview Hollywood stars and I interview UFO stars. It's been almost a year old. I've had a lot of major people on there. Between you and I shouldn't say this live, but I'm trying to move that show over to iHeartMedia. I have a good friend who co-created MTV, and he's a friend of mine, and he's pitching it as we speak to iHeartMedia. I'm hoping my little baby podcast can go to iHeart, and then, instead of 200 people, 200,000 people can see my podcast. So that's what I'm working on right now. But I'm done writing books, man. Writing books is a commitment. It's a commitment. Each of these books took me most of a year to write.
After working with all these celebrities for so many years, have you ever discovered any type of common denominator between them all that makes a person super successful?
That's a really excellent question. When I knew Bruce Springsteen in 72, 73, my friends and I, we actually knew him. He used to sleep on the beach, hitchhike. He did not have a car. He slept on the beach, man. His father kicked him out of his house. He used to play bar bands and stuff. He didn't bathe. He didn't smell very good. And this guy never, ever, ever was going to give up. It was not going to happen. He was going to play rock and roll if it killed him. Look what happened with him, right? I would say most of the people that I've come to know were pretty, I would say driven. You have to be driven. You have to be an exhibitionist. I've given lectures. I did stand-up comedy. I've played drums with bands on stages. I'm not a natural performer. I'm not a natural person to be on a stage. I'm a writer. I'd rather write and have someone else say my words. It would make me happier. Like Neil Simon always said that. He goes, I don't want to be on a stage. I want to write the words. A lot of people have incredible drive to succeed. Other people, for example, my friend Dee Wallace, she was beautiful. She left her parents at a young age. She came to Hollywood. She didn't know what she really wanted to do. She was beautiful and beautiful, charismatic woman. She got asked to do little films here and there. She didn't have a Bruce Springsteen drive. She had an interest, and then once she caught on and realized, hey, I'm pretty good at this. I should keep doing this. So I'd say half the people in Hollywood, unbelievable drive, nothing, absolutely nothing is going to get in their way. The other half, I don't want to say they're lucky, but I'll say they sort of get discovered and are liked. They're charismatic people. They find a path and they eventually succeed. So I would say that there's two groups of people.
I would assume working with the rock band Kiss that they were pretty driven guys.
I have funny stories about them. I met them in 1973 at the Sunshine Inn in Asbury Park. It was their first ever show that was not in New York City, ever. Backstage, I'm with Gene Simmons. Now, they had the makeup, and I'm with Gene Simmons backstage, and he's sweating, Jeff, through the white makeup. So it looked like his face was like bleeding. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's white makeup, but then there's sweat coming through. And I'm like, I was scared. I'm like, you never saw anything like it in your life. He goes, hey, Dan, man. He goes, can you get my band some Cokes, man? We're really thirsty. I go, okay, Gene. So I had to run. I didn't even have a car yet. I didn't drive yet. I had to run down the street to the 7-Eleven and get a 12-pack of Coca-Colas and bring them back and hand them to Kiss. And Gene goes, thanks, man, thanks. So that's my first interaction. In 2015 in Hollywood, I did another event with Kiss, Gene and Paul. And they were guest stars at an event, a press conference that I did. And after the press conference, I said, Gene, I met you. This is 2015. I go, Gene, I met you in 1973 in Asbury Park at the Sunshine Inn. He goes, don't you mean 1873? He was super tired. He had just gotten back to LA from Japan. You could tell he had jet lag. Don't you mean 18? It was so funny, man. And I go, do you remember the Sunshine Inn at Asbury Park? He goes, Dan, I remember everything. So, yeah, those guys were Gene and Paul. They were driven, and they still are. And I've met Paul several times. Very nice guy too.
Dan, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Sure, absolutely. I really enjoy meeting people since I became an author. It's been a lot of fun for me, and I'm very flattered and very honored when I go to events now, UFO events, people go, Dan, can I get your autograph? I'm like, really? Really? Me? Richard Dolan is right over there, Nick Pope is right. Yeah, Dan, no, we saw you. Yeah, could I get your book? And he gets, okay. It's like, I've been a publicist for 40 years for others, and I've been my own author for 2. To get limelight for publicists don't seek the limelight as a rule. It's just not what publicists do. We are behind the scenes people. But anyway, it's been a lot of fun. So the answer is yes. DanHararyAuthor.com. Dan Harary, Harary, author.com. All my books are there. All my great photos of me with all these very, very famous Hollywood celebrities. There are really some really fun photos there. And you can contact me through there. All my books are on Amazon, Flirting with Fame, After They Came, My Paranormal Life, and 5. I have another book about sex that I don't promote because women yell at me when I do that. All my books are on Amazon. And then HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. It tells you how to join. It tells you how to contact me or Stephen Bassett. And if you'd like to make a donation to help us spread disclosure across the media, film, TV, and documentaries. That's what we're actually doing as we speak. It's something that we're doing now. I'd say in the next few years that you'll see on a screen, this movie was endorsed by the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. It's where what is it? The American Humane Association with animals. At the end of a movie, no animals were harmed.
Mm-hmm.
Ours is going to be, I'll just joke, and I just thought of this, no aliens were harmed in the making of this. I just thought of that just now. I think that's pretty funny.
I think it's great.
So Dan Harary, author. And Jeff, man, this was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Well, don't go yet because
Okay.
I'd like to get one last question from you.
Sure, I thought we were done. Go ahead.
Or statement. But before you leave, can you give us one last positive message?
If anyone out there watching or listening has had a UFO or ET experience that you've never, ever had the courage to share, okay? You've never had the courage to share with anyone. The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance wants to hear from you because it's like you said to me earlier, a safe place. The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is a safe place of like-minded people, 200 people all over the world and growing, to share real events, abductions. I know several women who are very good friends of mine who had their fetuses taken on ships, and then years later, they met their children on a ship years later. I have 3 women in mind that are very close friends of mine, and they all told me the same story. This stuff is real. Not everything is real. Not everything you see in the sky is a UFO or a UAP, but I think a good third are extraterrestrial, I believe. I think a third are military, and I think a third are just misidentified. So go to HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. Join us, share your story. It's a safe place. Other people will embrace you. You'll have a place to talk. I'm not a therapist, but we actually have therapists who are members. We have regression hypnotists who are members. In fact, on September 21st, next Saturday, I will be hypnotized, me personally, for 3 hours by Yvonne Smith. Yvonne Smith is a world-famous regression hypnotherapist. She works with thousands of UFO and ET abductees, and she hypnotizes them to learn how to relax and embrace and accept their experiences. So my positive message, Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, Join us, share your stories and your messages. There might be a Hollywood producer out there who wants to turn your story into a movie or a TV show. That's our goal. But that would be my positive message for your listeners.
Dan, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, brother. That was super fun.
Thanks for watching the Jeff Mara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.